So I talked a bit about consulting and contracting and the pros and cons of that, but I'd like to take some time to talk about some tips for consulting and contracting, because I think it's tough, and unfortunately I'm going to be using my cheat sheet over on the computer. But hopefully these are helpful to some of you who may be considering going down that path. So let me see what I have. Firstly, at least in my experience, there's been feast or famine. There's times where I have, a ton of consulting opportunities, and you have to decide between projects, or you have to decide to put your stuff on the back burner. Or, times when you want something and there's just nothing available. And, this is a challenge, I think, especially when you're trying to juggle your own projects. And I think if you're just a sole developer, or you have a really small team, I think it's easier to put your own stuff on hold. But if you're, trying to juggle different projects, and different projects have different needs at the same time, then it could be like I did some consulting, some contracting stuff on top of Neverending Nightmares to make money to fund Neverending Nightmares. And I was able to find time to squeeze that in. It was really hard, but I managed to squeeze it in. But, at other points in the project, there's no way I would be able to squeeze that in, or, other teammates couldn't squeeze it in, or we don't want to put, a project on hold to work on something else. And so it's tough. And I think if you're a sole developer and, you want to fund things by contracting, I think to some extent you almost want to accept everything when it comes along, because there's going to be that time when you want something and there's nothing. So if you have that nest egg and you sort of built that up, then you have more flexibility, and then it doesn't feel so terrible when you have to say, oh, we're really trying to get this out the door and I can't do this project. Because sometimes, the deal comes your way, and then you can't do a different deal, and then you're maybe off your schedule for your own project. So it's definitely a challenge. With sort of this feast or famine, you can't control when you'll get a promising consulting opportunity. But basically I would say almost take as much as you can until you have, rolling in dough and have enough to work on your stuff comfortably, which can sometimes end in a vicious cycle where you just keep accepting consulting work, and then you get further and further away from what you actually want to be doing. But I don't know. You can always say no at that point. So I would say don't undervalue your time, and I think this is an important one. Because, when you give a consulting rate, it's going to be high, or it should be high. And the reason it should be high is to somewhat, help smooth over the feast or famine aspect of it, because, there'll be times where you can't get something and you'll be looking for it, or you have to sort of pitch yourself, and when you're sort of pitching yourself, you can't bill for that, and that can be time consuming, and so you have to sort of bake that into your consulting costs. So the thing that I've found to be most helpful is to be totally honest and completely upfront with costs and time estimates and everything. And if the people I'm working with are not comfortable with it, then I think it's good to walk away, because in the end, right, your relationship with that person is based on delivering on the things that you say you can do. And if you are wrong about that, then that reflects poorly on you. And so if someone's asking for a feature and I'm like, this will add in more time than we've budgeted, this will be more expensive, I present them as soon as I know that, and I say, what do you want to do? And at least that has been very beneficial to me, because it's really tough to come up with a time estimate, and often the work will grow beyond that. So, if you can't really come up with those numbers, then it's going to be tough to be a consultant. And certainly for me, I take my sort of ballpark estimate and then I double it, because basically that's usually how far off my ballpark estimates are. But also, in my experience, it's better to come in under budget than over budget, right? Because if, I finish something in half the time that they budgeted for, right, then that's great. That's great for everyone. Whereas if I come in twice as high, then that looks poorly on me. But usually doubling it, for me at least, has worked out pretty well, and it accounts for a little bit of growing and changing of the requirements, but which sometimes it gives us a little time to do some extra features, but these are things that people probably should expect, right? Like I don't know if anyone's ever had a spec and it just stayed at that spec and never change anything. Certainly for game development, I think that would make a very low quality game, unless somehow you just miraculously know what's fun. So I would say don't take projects that set yourself up for failure. And I think this is basically an important one. The thing is, right, like, people can have unrealistic expectations for what's, what they can deliver. And so, like, we were looking at some potential projects when we first started at 24 Karat Games. And, it was pretty clear that what they wanted to do, in the time they had, wasn't really doable. And that's a tough position to be in, and we could have said, oh well, we'll try our best, or we'll see what we can do, or are you comfortable with a little more money or a little more time or whatever. But I think it's in general it's a good idea to just say this maybe isn't a fit for me, or this isn't something we can deliver on, because the problem is that then you essentially are on the hook to deliver that thing, which may not be reasonable. It may not be doable at all. There's a funny video about, like, product requirements and how they're changing, about I can't remember, something about red circles, and then they're supposed to be blue but drawn with a red marker or something. I don't know. I'm sure you can find the video. You probably have already seen it. But that's the type of thing that can happen. And certainly if you're starting from a point where their expectations are unreasonable, it's tough to imagine that they will get more reasonable as time goes on. You could somehow sell them on becoming reasonable. And that basically, you're putting yourself in a bad position. And I mean, you can always hope, like, oh, once they're, halfway into this project, and once they're really invested, then they'll be willing to, spend the extra money to go the rest of the way. But I don't think that's a safe assumption, and I don't think that's something you want to do, because, what if they go out of business? Then you don't get paid. There's a lot of bad things that could happen if the product is not delivered as promised. And so I think that's definitely something to watch out for. And I think my final note was double your time estimates. Which I have already talked about, but maybe depending on where you are and how good your estimates are, maybe it's triple, right? Maybe it's 1.5 times. Although I think double is probably a pretty good thing, because I work with other developers, some who have more experience than I, and usually I take their estimates and double it, and that seems to work out okay too. So, I mean, just because, like, there's so many other things you have to interface with the people you're working with. There's all those like really crazy bugs that you're always going to forget. So yeah, definitely you want to overestimate. But I mean, try to accurately overestimate. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. Thanks for watching.